Hello, and welcome to A Dominican Way. I'm Sister Vivien Jennings, a Dominican Sister of Caldwell, and with us today are three other Dominican sisters who have been on a wonderful journey to the area which is called the Rhineland area in France to learn more about the Dominican Mystics, and they're here to share some information with us. Let me introduce them first. This is Sister Barbara Moore. Sister Barbara is on the theology faculty at Caldwell College. Next is Sister Elaine Keenan, who is on staff at the Academy of St. Elizabeth's in Convent Station. And finally, Sister Jeanne Goyette, who teaches at Mount St. Dominic Academy. So, Sister Jeanne, if I can start with you, since you were the visionary for this trip, and ask you to tell us a little bit about why you zeroed in on this particular area and this topic.
More than 17 years we've been doing a retreat in Fangeau in France, where Dominic lived and preached. And we decided that it was time to start another project. And the Rhineland Mystics have always intrigued me, and I felt it would be a wonderful way for people to learn more about them and to pray with them. Since this is a retreat, we spend a lot of time in contemplative silence, as well as listening to conferences and community prayer, to try to really understand and to deepen our understanding of what the mystics were all about and their relationship with God. So it was a new attempt, and it was very well received. We had a waiting list the first year. People were very interested in it. And I think it's probably because people are yearning for a more contemplative experience, not only on retreat, but also in their daily lives.
Wonderful. And Elaine, did it measure up to your expectations?
Oh, tremendously. And actually, I went on this retreat with the hope of learning more about our Dominican family. I had the privilege of being on the Fangeau retreat several years ago, and then traveled to Florence, Italy, to learn about Catherine of Siena. And Mary O'Driscoll was the presenter at both of those retreats. So when I heard this retreat was being offered, I got tremendously excited about it. And, you know, knowing that she was going to be the presenter and that this was an area of our Dominican family that I didn't know that much about.
Yes. And I should clarify for our viewers that when we talk about Dominican family, we're talking about those men and women who follow in the spirit of St. Dominic, who founded the Dominican order back in the 13th century. So there are more than 800 years of history now and of evolving spirituality that we are privileged to participate in and to preach about. Sister Barbara, what about your first impressions?
Well, I think initially it was a fabulous experience for me. I think I was drawn to it simply, partly along with Elaine, Mary O'Driscoll, and the fact that I had made retreats with her in the past too. But I had been reading a book by Richard Rohr on mystics, seeing as the mystics see. And that kind of piqued my interest in the mystics and how does what he talks about with regard to mysticism line up with our understanding of our Dominican mystics in the past. So when I saw this advertisement for the retreat of the Rhineland Mystics, I was really attracted to that. And of course, travel will always attract me anyway. That's a good one.
And now, what about this word mystic? What is a mystic? Anybody?
Well, you know, there's a lot of discussion about what the word mystic really means. And some people will say it's those who have a deep, deep yearning for relationship with God, to be in God's presence as much as possible. And I kind of like that because it doesn't put it up in the clouds. It makes it very practical, that to be more aware of God's presence in your everyday life. And as much as Meister Eckhart, who was one of the Rhineland Mystics, may be seen as a speculative preacher, he was also very practical in the things that he proposed for people to do and how to live their spiritual lives. So that's what I understand as mystic. Maybe
nice
someone else
definition.
wants
Anybody
to.
else want to?
Well, no, it's just that mystics to me were, people who were kind of out there.
Yes.
And I guess that was an eye-opener for me, the simplicity of the message that was given, to kind of go deeper down into yourself in order to find God and not be so focused on the externals, but to let go of the things that block us from relating to God. And particularly, like your own schedule or computers, whatever it is, that kind of distract us. And so I felt that it was a very enriching experience.
I like the term that Eckhart uses of the wayless way.
Ah, yes.
That it's not trying to come up with a plan or a program or a process to reach God, that God is already here in the moment. God is already within us and around us. And so there's that simplicity of acknowledging that presence, which is really hard because we live in a very fast-paced life, a lot of distractions, a lot of obligations. And when I think of mystic too, I think, in thinking about all that we talked about and read and reflected on, it's a full-time job.
Yes.
So I think that's what makes it hard for the average person to be a mystic, because you almost have to detach from almost everything else and really focus on, this whole sense of presence of God, or that whole sense of the now, the moment right now.
I noticed that none of you mentioned anything about seeing visions.
Well, we didn't know.
Yes, we don't want to. No visions.
It's a very, the way that it was presented to us is that, God is here. And God can't stop loving us. So it's a matter of just recognizing that more and more. That's what becoming a mystic is. Because God's just always offering God's self and God's love, and we just have to recognize it.
One of the terms that pops into my mind as you're saying that, Jeannie, is that whole sense of the birthing of God.
Yes.
That God is continually birthing in us. If we allow that, I think Mary O'Driscoll used the term the God hole within us, allowing that to be filled, which happens in silence and quiet, not in so much doing. It's not about doing, but it's about just being.
I think that really came to light at night when 37 women gathered, and one man, pardon me, Father Donna Gaucher. He led us in the meditation every night, and to sit in a room with all these people and go down into that quiet for 25 minutes and really see the impact that it can have on your life. It's just amazing. Because it's like something that you did, I did when I was in high school. You learned how to meditate, part of the sodality. But, this was just a reawakening of something that is just so helpful.
And at this point in our lives, you bring so much more experience to the moment. You mentioned Mary O'Driscoll several times. Jean, could you tell us something about Sister's background?
Sister Mary O'Driscoll is an Irish Dominican sister from a congregation of Cabra. She has been giving retreats and conferences probably all her life. She's taught at the Angelicum in Rome and has written several books, primarily on Catherine of Siena. I see her as a real dear sister who is very profound in what she says, but has a great simplicity about her. And she's very sisterly to everyone. And it's been a joy to work with her for all these 17 years, really.
Is it that long, Sister Jean?
Yes. Yeah. I want to go back to contemplation for 1 minute. Sometimes people think that, you sit in silence and you have these wonderful revelations while you're sitting there. And the fact of the matter is, sometimes most of the time, just nothing happens that we can recognize. And yet it's that faithful commitment to being in the silence where God is, that is what contemplation is all about. Do you remember the story, Elaine, of Donna when he was in the monastery, or he was with the
with the guru?
Buddhists? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell them that story if you can remember.
Well, my recollection was that, you know, they would have long periods of silence throughout the day, and he always felt like nothing was happening. And so when he went to meet with the Zen master, he verbalized his concern over the fact that nothing was happening. And I forget what the punchline was, but the reality was that that's just being is finding God. You know, just being in the moment.
What's that punchline?
I know. I know. I probably wrote it down and then.
But that's enough. That's quite a bit.
That's
He gave some stories of other people's experiences too, where, you know, it was basically the same idea that, you know, that you feel like nothing really is happening, but yet God's working there within you in the silence.
I don't think it happens then.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yes.
There's that sense of the presence of God. You know, when those aha moments in our lives, or those realizations of things that we're trying to figure out, that suddenly it seems very clear. It comes to us in a way that we didn't expect.
Yes.
So I think that whole sense that the grounding of God in us, that God is there, and we're part of God's ground too, and it unfolds in our lives. But we need to be quiet and peaceful and settled enough for God, as Mary said, to get into the hole.
Yeah.
You know, to be there.
And I like that phrase that Jeanne used before, the faithful commitment to the silence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is the unfolding, I'm sure. And now tell me about some of the places that you visited and some of the mystics that you encountered.
Well, I think each one of us was a mystic, is a mystic, not was a mystic, is a mystic.
And for 5 days.
One of the joys, too, of these retreats is that we're meeting with Dominican members of the Dominican family from all over the world and all over the country. Like we had sisters from Ireland, we had sisters from the West Coast, we had sisters from Central USA, we had sisters from the East Coast, from, you know, the South. And to be with them, and we're all sisters, we're all Dominicans, some laity, you know, and some professed religious, but we're all in this together. And it brings together such a rich variety of people. When we do the introductions in the beginning, it's like amazing, the variety that's there, and yet the unity that's there as well. So that's part of the story, as well as visiting a few places. We went to Strasbourg, which is where Meister Eckhart lived and preached for about 10 years. It's also where John Tauler, who was another of the mystics, a student of Meister Eckhart, where he lived and where he worked and preached.
There's a little bit of a funny story there, Jeannie, where when we went to the place, what is it called? The Temple Neuf, and it's supposed to be where Tauler was buried, and we're looking all over the place. We could not find him. There's a huge bookcase pushed into the corner, and someone kind of looked behind this huge bookcase, and sure, that's where his tomb was.
His tombstone.
So old ladies, Dominicans, pulled away this bookcase. They were all snapping pictures behind it of his tomb.
Oh my.
Tombstone.
Tombstone, right. Yeah.
So, and then of course we took a little ride on the river. But the second place we visited was Coma, which is also in France. And it's the place where a very famous Dominican monastery flourished in the 1400s, whatever. It is now a museum. But just to be there and know that it was a place where these Dominican women mystics lived and prayed and sang and welcomed people. So that was, even the museum itself is very interesting. But then we were very privileged to be able to go to the library in Coma, where they have the original manuscripts that were hand done by the sisters at this monastery. You know, calligraphy plus beautiful illustrations. And we were able to look at them this close.
Why?
And at one point, you know, their missals and some of the choral, the things that the sisters sang at different feasts. And there was one that was in Gregorian chant, the words for the Christmas preface, I guess, or preface. And we had a liturgist with us, and she was able to sing from the script.
Oh, my.
And it was just so touching, because you felt like you were right with those sisters who had done this beautiful work.
Yes.
And that was another interesting point, that it was the women Dominicans who really preserved a lot of the history and, you know, were responsible for us being in tune now with what took place.
Isn't that lovely?
Centuries ago.
That is a very important piece of this, isn't it?
Yeah. They recorded Eckhart's sermons
really,
and Tauler's, is that right?
Now, these were more or less contemporaries, Tauler and Eckhart and so on. Was that a special period in the history of the church where mysticism seemed to come alive? Because it is not something that until recently has been talked about much.
Right. It was the 1300s and the 1400s in particular. When it was also when Catherine of Siena was.
Yes.
And other mystics in different countries were blossoming. So I guess the church was in turmoil at that point.
Yes.
And it's interesting that this is when the mysticism flourished.
That is interesting. It's almost as if God was offsetting the commotion of mostly southern Europe with the Babylonian captivity of the popes in Avignon, as they refer to it today.
Right.
And the divisions in Italy, which of course hadn't come together as a country yet. And here in further north in France and Germany, there was this pocket of intense spirituality.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Who knows what's happening elsewhere in the world today, right? As we're coping.
We need some new mystics.
Yes.
You know, they're there, but...
Well, in reading Rohr's book on mysticism, I am almost sure that he has studied the Rhineland Mystics, because he's so much in line with their thoughts. Yeah.
Or we can blame it on the Holy Spirit. It's because it is still alive. Are there any, excuse me, are there many Dominican monasteries today, either priests or sisters?
In France?
Yes, and where you traveled?
Many of them have been, because of the French Revolution, many of them were emptied. And many of them have been taken over by the government since. I mean, I even think of the Jacobins Church in Toulouse.
Oh, surely, yes.
You know, which was a wonderful Dominican presence there, and but the revolution was totally, it was preserved, thank God, but the Dominicans were forced to leave. So that has happened in many of the monasteries. I think new ones or smaller ones have evolved. Some few have remained, like Regensburg.
Yes, of course. Right.
But many of them are now museums or used for other purposes, like hotels and things.
But the history's still there.
Yes,
that's
and
the
the fact
thing
that the
that
building
struck me.
remains
Right.
Keeps the history alive, especially in places where they've made them into museums and libraries. At least the history is carried forward.
Right.
I can remember through the trip Jeannie saying that was a Dominican house, or that was a Dominican church, or that was a Dominican this, or that was a Dominican that. And amazing too that getting back to the manuscripts, the liturgical books, that they lasted through the wars, because Alsace was the center of World War II.
Yes, that's right.
So that these, and even that some of these buildings weren't absolutely razed and destroyed, and are still standing and now are being used in other ways.
Yes, that's wonderful that much is preserved. And you mentioned Regensburg before, and Regensburg, of course, is the monastery from which many of the American Dominican congregations came. We've talked about that in previous programs, actually, on the Dominican Way. And we ourselves are one of the congregations that came from the monastery at Regensburg, where several of those sisters were invited to come to America in the 19th century, early 19th century, and work with the German immigrants. So that life continues.
Yeah.
But those sisters are still very much alive, and it's quite a vibrant community, but it is quite cloistered.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So what about now Tauler and Eckhart, and was there another particular mystic that you encountered?
No,
In your
we
travels?
primarily Mary concentrated on Eckhart Tolle and Suzo.
And Suzo, oh yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting you were asking about other monasteries. When I was trying to set up this retreat, I was trying to go to Germany because I figured that's where the Rhineland Mystics would be.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I was not able to find a place which could handle 36 people,
Yeah.
which could house 36 people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we stayed with some Dominicans, but it was a smaller place. And so I was almost ready to say, well, I guess this isn't what God is hoping for us or planning. And then I came upon this place outside of Strasbourg, and that's where we ended up, which turned out to be very lovely.
And was it a monastery as well?
It's not exact. It's run by the Franciscan sisters, our cousins, the Franciscans,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and it's really a retreat center.
I say, oh yes, good.
Mm-hmm.
So it can accommodate a larger group.
Yeah.
Very hospitable, very welcoming,
Oh, lovely.
very comfortable.
Mm.
Very tranquil, rural area.
Is that right? So that aided the meditation of
Exactly.
In the midst of corn and wheat fields.
And cows.
And cows. And a wonderful orchard, and we all found
Yes.
the cherry tree, and by the time we left, any cherry trees that could be reached were gone. Cherries that were reachable.
The harvest.
Were gone.
Very good. That's part of the Lord providing for the pilgrim, right?
That's right.
And did you find that just that kind of an environment was supportive of a meditative and a
Definitely.
contemplative attitude?
Yes. It was a very tranquil area, and it just lent itself to prayer and quiet and contemplative prayer. So, and lovely facilities.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yes.
You know, because if you're coping with a lot of adversity just to sustain yourself, that in itself is a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're planning another one for next year.
Wonderful. That's excellent.
In July 20th to 28th, at the same place. Mary O'Driscoll and Father Dunna will be there. So we've already been receiving registrations. So
Already, that's wonderful.
yes. So we're hoping for another.
So there's obviously a clientele, whether Dominican or not,
Right.
that is looking for some enrichment of that.
Many
nature.
of the people who did the retreat in Fangeau and Siena are coming back because, like Elaine, they had such good experiences on the other retreats
yes.
that they're looking forward to another one.
That's very
Jeanne, we
nice.
congratulate you too, because you have a wonderful way of pulling all of this together. And
Thank
also
you.
the rhythm of the retreat, enough, I don't want to say travel, it sounds like a vacation, but enough of incorporating the environment into the retreat, and it's a good balance.
Well, thank you.
Especially when you're coming off, a busy schedule, to be launched into a long time of quiet without some kind of relief is difficult.
Yes.
There's a nice balance there.
Good, thank you.
Yes, that has been a wonderful ministry among many things that you've done, Sister Jeanne. It's been a real blessing, I'm sure, to many people.
Thank you. It's been a joy, really.
That's nice.
And people are so refreshed by it and so renewed by it that we just keep doing it.
Then you can see that it's God's work. That's what makes you keep doing it, of
Right.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. Are there any, if someone were thinking about going, for example, or even just staying here and wanting to grow in an awareness of the mystics or of contemplative prayer, are there any readings or experiences that you could recommend? Any of you that...
Well, Barbara, what about the book?
Eckhart's Way. Richard Wood has 2 or 3 books out on Eckhart's Way himself. Richard Rohr's book, The Naked Now, seeing as the mystic. Seeing is what reintroduced me into mysticism, an interest in mysticism, and curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah. Easy to read, very practical, very down to earth. And if you know Eckhart and you read Rohr, you're just almost convinced that these guys have met each other somewhere. It's just within the Holy Spirit. It's happened.
Yeah, rather than to take Eckhart on in his original writings, it's good to start with a book like Eckhart's Way. It's another version of it, which brings it, summarizes and brings it more to a simpler reading.
Yes.
And yet it's profound enough that it does touch you. So.
Yes, beautiful. Well, we want to thank you all for being with us today, Sister Jeanne, Elaine, Barbara, and for the very rich sharing that we and I'm sure our viewers will enjoy.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having us.
Thank you.